I'm Erin, 32, just a quiet face in a loud family. I thought maybe, just maybe her birthday would be different, but I was still the one handed the apron, still the one standing by the kitchen while they toasted without me. What happened next, no one at that party saw coming. They didn't expect me to show up early. I wasn't on the planning thread. I wasn't added to the group photo folder. And when the party planner passed out apron assignments, my name was scribbled in pencil at the bottom next to beverage refill. Amanda's birthday was always an event. Diane, our mother, made sure of it. This year, she rented a vineyard-style house just outside the city. Rustic wood beams, white linen napkins matching flower arrangements in tiny mason jars. They hired a chef too, a private one, for 40 people. It was the kind of gathering where Instagram mattered more than conversation. I parked down the road and walked the rest of the gravel path in heels. It had rained the night before. My shoes caught some mud, but no one noticed because no one greeted me. I saw Amanda first. She stood near the entryway beaming in a silky cream jumpsuit, with her hair pulled back in a bun that must have taken hours. She laughed at something Thomas whispered and turned her back before I reached the door. I paused, hand hovering above the handle. Then I pushed in. Erin, Diane said flatly, like she was reading a name off a forgotten invitation. The serving aprons are on the rack by the kitchen. No hug. No, I'm glad you came. She walked away before I responded. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass cabinet, neat, quiet eyes alert. I hung my purse and found the rack. Someone had left me the brown apron. Everyone else wore white. The kitchen buzzed with final prep. Jenna breezed past me holding a tray of champagne flutes. "Hi, Erin," she chirped, not stopping. "Can you take the backup napkins to the deck?" "They're in the hallway closet, behind the fan." I nodded and went. The closet door squeaked too loud for the quiet house. I shut it fast and carried the stack outside. The deck was already filling with guests. Most were Amanda's friends from college, all teeth and tan and casual bragging. They didn't know me. Or they forgot me. Either way, no one asked my name. I left the napkins at the side table and turned to head back in when I overheard Thomas say, "She still lives in that tiny studio, right? The one above the dry cleaner." Amanda snorted. "God, yes." Someone chuckled. I kept walking. I didn't stumble. My fingers stayed relaxed around the doorknob. Inside, Uncle Ray was opening wine bottles by the bar. He looked up and smiled. Actually smiled. "Didn't think you'd make it, kiddo." "I almost didn't," I said quietly. He poured a glass and slid it toward me. "Well, I'm glad you did. I didn't drink it." Because just then, Diane entered the room with a clipboard and said, "Erin, the chef, needs help with the hors d'oeuvres. Could you check in with him?" No one else was asked? Just me. I made my way to the back kitchen through a hallway I didn't know existed. The chef stood with his back turned, plating tiny toasts with tarragon cream. He didn't see me enter. So I waited, in silence, not out of fear, but because I wanted to see if anyone ever turned around. The chef finally turned around. He blinked, caught off guard, then nodded once, professional neutral. I asked if he needed anything. He handed me a tray without making eye contact. Mini quiches. They smelled like butter and rosemary. I walked them out to the patio where guests had begun to gather near the fire pit. Most wore pastels, linen, and open smiles, the kind of polished cheer that made you feel underdressed even when you weren't. "Care for one?" I asked, voice calm. A few guests took them without looking at me. One woman muttered "thank you" without lifting her eyes from her phone. Amanda passed by again. She didn't stop. Just raised an eyebrow when she noticed me carrying the tray and said loud enough for her friend to hear, "Didn't know we'd hired extra waitstaff." Her friend laughed. I didn't respond. I placed the tray on the serving table, adjusted the tongs, and stepped away. Diane was fussing with flower placements. "Erin, can you refill the ice bucket? Use the one from the back fridge, not the main one." She didn't wait for a reply. She never did. As I walked back through the house, I passed the framed family photos. Amanda was in almost all of them, centered, smiling. In one, I stood behind the group, barely visible. I don't even remember taking it. The back fridge was tucked away in the laundry room. I opened it slowly, found the bag of ice and paused. There was a card taped to a small brown box inside. My handwriting, it was the birthday gift I had mailed a week ago, unopened. I stared at it, then shut the door. The box stayed inside. Back on the patio, Uncle Ray waved me over. "Hey, wanna sit?" I glanced at the open chairs near him. One was partially blocked by a serving cart, the other had a tote bag on it. "I'm okay," I said. He looked at me for a second too long. I could tell he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Jenna rushed over and handed me a fresh tray. "We're out of those little caprese bites. Can you—" I took it without a word. Later, I stood by the garden steps watching the golden hour light fall across the yard. Amanda was posing with Thomas Diane fixing a curl that had come loose. People clapped when someone brought out the cake. It was a 5-layer raspberry torte iced perfectly topped with a single white orchid. They gathered for photos again. I wasn't asked to join. Thomas said something about keeping it intimate. Someone handed me a slice to carry out to the gazebo. I held it carefully, 2 hands flat beneath the plate. The breeze caught the napkin and lifted it just enough to expose the monogram A+D. Amanda and Diane. Of course. When I returned, Diane handed me a lighter. "Can you light the citronella candles? The guests are complaining." I lit one, then another. Then I paused by the third. The match burned low. I blew it out before the flame reached my fingers. Across the lawn, Amanda caught my eye. She smiled, but it wasn't warmth. It was victory. She thought I'd faded, that I'd accepted my place. I turned and walked back inside. The gift was still in the fridge. This time I took it. I wiped the condensation from the box with my sleeve. The tape was still sealed, my name still written in careful cursive. I held it for a moment. Not tight, just deliberate. Then I stepped out of the laundry room and walked back into the party. No one noticed. The sun had dipped lower now, casting long shadows across the patio. Guests were shifting toward the covered terrace where lanterns were beginning to glow warm and gold. Someone had turned on soft jazz. Amanda was at the center of it all, laughing, hugging, accepting compliments about her dress. Thomas hovered nearby, ever the polished fiancé. I stood near the edge by a small table with a glass pitcher of lemon water. I didn't drink, just watched. Erin Diane called. Her voice cut through the music. "Can you bring out the extra plates? The dessert ones?" I nodded once and turned toward the house. I placed the box on the kitchen island near the cake stand, then retrieved the stack of plates like she asked. As I passed back through the crowd, Jenna brushed my arm. "You good? I'm fine," I said. She didn't press. A few minutes later, Amanda tapped a fork against her champagne glass. Everyone turned toward her. "Before we get to the real gifts," she said, her voice light, "I just want to thank everyone for coming. This is exactly the birthday I imagined." Applause. Smiles. She opened a few cards, lifted the tissue paper from designer bags. A pair of gold heels. A bracelet. A handwritten letter from Diane. Then she looked at the last box. Mine. Unwrapped. Still cold from the fridge. Amanda tilted her head. "What's this?" Diane leaned over. "That's from Erin. It came in the mail last week. I forgot to put it out." There was an awkward pause. Amanda peeled the tape slowly. Inside, cushioned in deep navy velvet, was a framed photo. Not of us. It was of our grandmother, her, in a field of sunflowers holding Amanda as a baby, back when smiles weren't so rehearsed. Amanda stared. There was also a certificate beneath it. A donation made in Amanda's name to the hospice center where Grandma had spent her final weeks. No one said anything. Uncle Ray looked at me. Amanda swallowed. She didn't finish. The moment stretched. Someone at the back whispered, "That's really thoughtful." Diane shifted uncomfortably. Jenna took a step away from the crowd. Thomas broke the silence with a polite cough. "Shall we move on to dessert?" But the mood had changed. Just a little. I turned away, walked to the far edge of the patio, lit the last citronella candle. And for the first time all evening, no one called me back. The air grew heavier after the photo. Not tense, exactly, just weighted in a way that settled over everyone like the late summer dusk. Conversations dipped, then resumed quieter. Amanda didn't bring up the gift again, and no one asked. I wasn't surprised. After dessert, Diane beckoned me into the kitchen with a stiff smile. "Can you rinse these before we load them into the dishwasher?" She handed me a stack of used dessert plates without waiting for my answer. I rolled up my sleeves and let the warm water run the sound, a welcome distraction. From behind, I could hear laughter spilling back onto the patio. My name wasn't part of it. A moment later, Jenna stepped in. She didn't speak, just grabbed a towel and helped dry the plates in silence. "Nice photo," she said eventually. Grandma looked peaceful. I nodded. I thought Amanda might like it. Jenna glanced toward the window. "She doesn't know how to show it, Erin." But it hit her. Did it? She put the frame in the living room, quietly. It wasn't much, but it landed. The next day we returned for Amanda's brunch gathering. A few of her friends from college arrived, bright polished with their smiles a little too tight. I didn't recognize most of them, and they didn't ask who I was. Amanda had assigned seating for the brunch, a printed card at each place tucked in napkin rings shaped like tiny gold bows. My name wasn't on the main table. Instead, I found my name at the far end, tucked next to the drink station at a two-top. Jenna gave me a look, but I only smiled. "I like being near the coffee," I joked. Diane passed behind me. "Oh, you don't mind, do you, honey? We just didn't know if you'd be staying the whole time." I kept my tone even. "Sure." The food was beautifully laid out: quiches, fruit towers, individual yogurt parfaits in mason jars. Amanda stood beside Thomas as they welcomed each guest, offering kisses on the cheek and the same rehearsed laugh. Then came the speeches. Thomas raised his glass. "To Amanda, who somehow makes every room brighter, even this one filled with natural light." Everyone chuckled. I watched Amanda glow under the attention. Diane spoke next. From the moment Amanda was born, I knew she'd command attention. She always stood out. She glanced toward me but didn't linger. The guests clapped. I folded my napkins slowly, resting it in my lap. "Erin," someone called. It was one of Amanda's friends, tall, manicured, wearing a name tag that read Caitlin, Marketing. "I heard you moved back. What are you doing now?" I looked up. "I'm working on a literacy program with a nonprofit." "Oh," Caitlin said, "that's cute." She turned before I could respond. That word, cute. The way people say it when they want to close a conversation politely but firmly. I excused myself soon after. Inside, I rinsed my hands in the sink and stared at the window above it. The backyard was full of people smiling, but none of it reached me. Uncle Ray entered the kitchen and grabbed a soda from the fridge. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded. "Always." He looked at me for a beat longer than usual, then said, "You know they see you right. They just don't know what to do with you." I gave him a half smile. "That makes two of us." Outside, Amanda was cutting the birthday cake. The guests gathered around with phones raised, capturing every slice. She handed one to Thomas with a kiss, another to Diane. None for me. And still I stayed. Because that's what you do when it's family. You stay even when there's no seat saved. That evening, Amanda hosted a more formal dinner, a grown-up version of her Sweet 16, as she called it. The dining room was transformed: white tablecloths, gold-trimmed plates, low candlelight flickering across wine glasses. She'd hired a small trio to play soft jazz in the corner, and a photographer drifted around snapping posed candids. I arrived 5 minutes early and was met by Diane holding out a black apron. "We're short one server," she said as if she'd been waiting for me. "You don't mind, right? You're so good at keeping things moving." I looked at her hand, then back at her. Amanda stood behind her, pretending not to hear. I took the apron, tied it slowly. Of course not. I wasn't on the guest list anyway. Jenna's eyes tracked me from the staircase. She didn't say anything, just gave me a look that said more than words ever could. Throughout the evening, I poured water-cleared salad plates, refolded fallen napkins. No one spoke to me beyond polite thank yous. One guest asked if I was hired through an agency. Another handed me her empty champagne flute without making eye contact. Amanda never acknowledged me, except once, toward the end of the night as she made a toast. "To everyone who's helped me become who I am," she said, voice syrup sweet, hand resting lightly on Thomas's shoulder. "And to the people who quietly support from the background, you know who you are." She didn't look at me, but she didn't have to. Everyone laughed, softly raised their glasses. I stood by the hallway, a tray balanced in my hand. My face didn't change. Later in the kitchen, I ran into Mr. Patel. He'd arrived late and missed the opening speeches. His suit was slightly rumpled from travel, but his eyes were sharp alert. He blinked at me. "Aaron." I nodded. He smiled. "I didn't expect to see you in an apron." "Neither did I said quietly, then returned to wiping the counter. He hesitated. "You still working with the literacy program?" I nodded again. "I saw that new report," he said. "Your project got listed in the top 10 national initiatives." I paused mid-wipe. "You didn't know?" he asked. I shook my head. "No one mentioned." He studied me. Then, in a tone both casual and loaded, added, "We're expanding our scholarship board." Your name came up. I blinked. Before I could respond, Jenna stepped into the kitchen. She froze when she saw Mr. Patel, then smiled and nodded respectfully. "Sir," she said. He nodded back, but his eyes returned to me. "I'll speak tomorrow," he said. "During Amanda's main luncheon." "Yes," I nodded slowly. As he left, Jenna stepped beside me. "What was that?" I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the small pantry where Amanda had kept her old birthday decorations. Behind the boxes taped to the wall was the height chart we'd made as kids. Amanda's line stopped at 15. Mine kept going. I touched it once, then closed the door. Outside, the music faded into something softer. Amanda's laugh floated in from the hallway, full and unchecked. Jenna whispered, "They have no idea." "No," I said. "But they will." The next morning, the sun filtered in through lace curtains, casting intricate patterns across the hardwood floor of my old childhood room. I hadn't stayed overnight, but I'd returned early to help prep Amanda's luncheon, a more public affair with extended family donors and some of her colleagues from the community board. I found myself setting up name tags. My own name wasn't on the list. When I asked Diane, she waved a hand. "We only printed for confirmed guests. You're helping, right?" I nodded, then walked away. In the garden, white tents were being erected. Waitstaff buzzed between tables. I overheard Amanda directing people, her voice crisp and commanding. She walked past me twice without acknowledgement, as if I were simply another pair of hands. As the event began, I stood behind the drink station arranging sparkling water bottles. From my vantage point, I could see everyone arriving, mingling, laughing. Then I saw Mr. Patel arriving with a calm, steady gait. Dressed in charcoal gray, he held an envelope tucked neatly under one arm. Amanda greeted him warmly, drawing attention from nearby guests. "You made it," she said brightly. He smiled. "Of course. And you'll speak?" "Yes, I added you to the program." "I assumed so," he replied smoothly, eyes scanning the crowd. When they landed on me, he gave a slight nod. Amanda followed his gaze. Her smile faltered for half a second. As the program began, I lingered on the fringe, pretending to refill napkins. Amanda delivered her speech, flawless as always, about community legacy and the strength of sisterhood. She didn't mention me. Then she introduced Mr. Patel. The murmurs quieted. Cameras tilted up. He stepped to the small podium with a composed air. "I'm honored to be here today," he began. "And even more honored to speak not only about leadership but about quiet impact." He paused. "Too often," he continued, "we celebrate the loudest voices, the most visible figures, but sometimes the ones who move the needle do so quietly without applause." Amanda tilted her head slightly. Mr. Patel glanced down at the envelope. "Today, I want to recognize someone whose work in literacy has changed lives. Someone this family may know by name, but perhaps not by deed." I didn't move. A hush spread across the tent. He unfolded a single sheet of paper. "The Patel Foundation is awarding a $50,000 grant to Aaron, the youngest finalist ever to lead a national adult education initiative." Gasps. Amanda stiffened beside the podium. Diane's glass tilted in her hand. I didn't step forward. "Not yet." Mr. Patel added, "Her proposal was selected unanimously, and I insisted on delivering this in person because sometimes presence is louder than words." He looked toward me. No one else moved. A fork clinked faintly on a plate. I finally stepped into the open space between tables, not smiling, not waving. Amanda's eyes met mine. She didn't speak. I nodded once, then turned quietly and walked back toward the house. Behind me, silence reigned, and just before I reached the back steps, I heard someone whisper, "She was the server yesterday." No one responded, not even Amanda. The afternoon air felt thicker when I stepped back into the house. The door shut softly behind me, not a slam, just enough to mark a line between two realities. I walked past the hallway mirror, catching my reflection for a split second. Same navy dress, same low bun, but something in my eyes had shifted. I heard voices behind me, faint, confused, scrambling for what to say next. But I didn't wait. Upstairs in the room where I'd left my coat, I sat for a moment, letting the quiet catch up with me. My phone buzzed, text messages pinging from distant cousins, one even from Uncle Ray. "Didn't know you were working with Patel, that's impressive." I didn't reply. Downstairs, the luncheon limped forward. People resumed eating, but there was an unmistakable stillness beneath the clatter of cutlery, a silence that had shape and weight. When I returned, it wasn't to join the crowd, but to gather the dessert trays. I wasn't asked. I just did it. As I moved between tables, I felt the difference not in what they said, but in what they didn't. Some wouldn't meet my eye. Others offered hesitant smiles. Amanda stood frozen near the buffet. Thomas had his hand gently on her back, whispering something I couldn't hear. She didn't respond. For once, her jaw wasn't tight with control, it was slack with disbelief. I stacked a few empty glasses on my tray and turned toward the kitchen. Then Diane appeared in front of me, blocking the way. "We should have known," she said quietly, almost to herself, "that something was coming." I tilted my head. "Did you?" Her lips parted, searching for a response, but none came. She stepped aside. I placed the tray in the kitchen, washed my hands, and took a moment to breathe beside the open window. From there I could see the guests still scattered, still unsure whether to stay or leave. When I returned to the garden to say goodbye to Mr. Patel, he stood alone near a hedge. "You handled that with grace," he said. "But I imagine it wasn't easy. I didn't do it for them." He smiled faintly. "I know." He handed me the envelope again, this time with a folded note on top. "Read this later. And Aaron, don't let anyone shrink your silence. Sometimes it's the only language they'll understand." I nodded. As I walked back through the gathering, conversations quieted. Jenna glanced at me and looked down. Thomas offered a nod, almost respectful. Even Uncle Ray gave a small salute with his glass. Amanda didn't speak, but when I passed her, she turned toward me just slightly, as if to say something, but thought better of it. I didn't pause. Instead, I crossed the yard, stepped out through the back gate, and kept walking. The sun was lower now, catching on the leaves above and throwing soft patterns across the sidewalk. Each step away felt less like leaving something behind, and more like returning to something I had built myself. The next morning I sat alone on my porch steps, a mug of lukewarm tea cupped in both hands. The envelope Mr. Patel had handed me still sat unopened on the table beside me, its edges crisp, untouched. I wasn't avoiding it, I just didn't need it to feel the change. For the first time in years, I wasn't rehearsing what I would have said if someone had listened. There was nothing left to prove. They had seen it publicly, undeniably. And that made all the difference. Later that afternoon, I received a voicemail from Jenna. "Hey, I wanted to say I didn't know about the scholarship or Patel or any of it. Amanda's been crying all day. I think she knows she went too far. Just call me when you're ready." I didn't press play again. I walked around my apartment, touching things that suddenly felt mine in a new way. The books I'd bought with my own money, the pictures I'd framed, the small chipped teapot from a thrift store I once loved. These things, this life had always been enough. I'd just forgotten that for a while. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a formal letter, but tucked within it was a handwritten note from Mr. Patel. "Aaron, what you've built quietly, persistently, is extraordinary. Some legacies are loud, yours doesn't need to be." There was also a business card with his private email and a single line written in pen. "Let me know when you're ready to do something even bigger." I smiled. 2 days later, Uncle Ray dropped by unexpectedly. He held a bag of oranges, something he always brought when he didn't know what to say. "I figured you might want these," he muttered, placing them gently on the kitchen counter. "You came all this way for oranges." He rubbed the back of his neck. Not exactly. He stood awkwardly for a moment, then finally met my eyes. Your dad would have been proud. I didn't answer. I just poured us both a glass of water, slid one across the table, and sat down. He understood that was enough. That weekend, Amanda sent a bouquet. No card. Just white lilies, her favorite, not mine. I left them on the porch. Some silences shouldn't be filled too quickly. By Sunday, Jenna texted a photo of the family gathered for brunch with a caption, "Not the same without you." I stared at it for a while. Then I typed, "Some seats aren't meant to be filled again," and hit send. On Monday morning, I dressed simply dark jeans, a soft gray blouse, the same shoes I wore at the party. I wasn't going anywhere special. I just needed to feel like myself, but solid. As I walked past the neighborhood bakery, the owner, Mrs. Keller, called out from behind the counter, "Hey, Aaron saw you in the paper. That was you with Patel, wasn't it?" I paused. "They quoted him calling you the quiet backbone of the initiative." "That's something," she added, smiling. I gave a small nod. "Thank you." Inside, I bought a scone and coffee. I sat at the window seat, the one no one used before 10 a.m., and let the warmth from the cup rest against my palms. The quiet hum of morning life played around me, and for once it didn't feel like I was watching from the outside. Back at home, I opened my laptop. An email from Mr. Patel waited, subject line, "Let's begin when you're ready." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked to the bookshelf and pulled out an old photo of me and Amanda as kids, covered in cake, laughing in the backyard. Somewhere along the line, something had shifted between us. Maybe it was never about me being less. It was about her fear of not being enough even when she had everything. I didn't hate her. I just didn't owe her anything anymore. That evening, I went for a walk by the lake, the same one they'd rented for her birthday. The water rippled quietly, mirroring the soft orange of sunset. I found a bench facing the dock and sat down. A family passed by, 2 daughters trailing behind their parents. The youngest tugged at her mother's sleeve, pointing at a duck. The mother smiled, bent down, and whispered something into her daughter's ear. The girl laughed. It was a full, bright sound. I closed my eyes, letting the air fill my lungs. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was just free. When I returned home, I tucked the scholarship letter and Patel's note into a folder and slid it into the drawer of my desk. I didn't need it on display. Some victories don't ask for applause. The next morning, Amanda called. I let it ring. She didn't leave a message. Instead, I opened a blank document on my computer and typed 2 words at the top, "Legacy Project." Then I stared at it for a moment before pressing save. I stood, walked to the window, and drew the curtains open. The light came in slowly, but it came. Some stories don't end with applause. They end with a seat left empty, a voice gone quiet, a truth finally visible without needing to be said. She didn't fight to be seen. She simply stood where they told her not to and let the silence speak for itself.